Welcome to Activating the Creative in You, where we gather with everyday people who are making a difference. Welcome. My name is Nancy Barrios, and I am your host. Thank you for joining in on our video podcast today. We're here to share with you encouraging and thought provoking discussions that are meant to activate you to move into God's purpose for your life. Quality staff for nonprofits, making it affordable. The effects of the COVID 19 pandemic have negatively impacted nonprofits, resulting in the loss of staff due to funding concerns. Nonprofits are being left with a big question. If they are not able to hire due to funding concerns, how will they remain sustainable or even survive? Imagine how this would impact their mission and vision. Our guest speaker made mention of this on a For Humanity podcast aired on Buzzsprout on August 18, 2020, titled The Economy, COVID and Nonprofits, Hiring and Finding a Position. Today, she will be sharing with you some tips on how you can effectively recruit the best talent for your nonprofit at no direct cost to you. I would like to introduce to you our guest speaker, Daphne Keys, founder and now the Director of Development for global nonprofit Helps. She brings to our discussion over 25 years of experience and expertise in the nonprofit sector in the areas of marketing, administration, donor development, grant support, volunteer recruitment, and much more. Welcome to Activation Talks, Daphne. Thanks for joining in today and being willing to share your great expertise and knowledge regarding the nonprofit sector. Where are you joining in from?
I live in Daytona Beach, Florida, but I am in Gainesville, Florida this weekend, hanging out with my nieces while my brother and his wife get to travel a little bit. So they went to a tennis match, which is interesting. But we're doing a girls' sleepover all weekend. So that's why we're on the back porch. They have a lovely backyard with a pool. So that's where we are.
Awesome.
Hanging out.
Well, you get the benefit of the sun at all times of the year. I'm still over here in the Midwest, so
you're going into fall, right?
Yes, the sun days are starting to be less. We're starting to see the weather change. It starts to rain and it starts to get more gray out. The days start to get shorter, and that's the seasons, you know. So I had introduced you before this, and I had mentioned some of your credentials. And before we launch into the discussion, I wanted to make sure that I had not left anything out, because I think one of the things that our audience should be aware of is that you're coming into this discussion with a very strong understanding of what's going on in the nonprofit sector. So if I've missed out on any information, feel free to fill in.
I think like most people in the nonprofit world, we all wear a lot of hats. So over the past 20, 25 years, I've moved from receptionist to director of development and worked closely with boards. So you didn't miss anything. I think that it's just the experience and the ability to notice what the biggest challenges are in most nonprofit organizations, especially small to medium size.
Why don't you catch us up on what's going on your end, being that you are not only the Director of Development, but you're also the founder of Global Nonprofit Help. Let us know what's going on, and then we can launch on into the discussion from that point.
Yeah, lots of great things. We actually just won a grant for one of my organizations. Very happy. A good, significant grant. That was very positive plus. We have I have two organizations that work internationally and one that works locally here in Florida, and each has a very good mission and a wonderful mission, but they're all three lowly staffed, very few staff. So working alongside them and helping them to increase the bottom line, which is what we really all need to do, and without spending too much money. So lots of great things happening. I don't just write grants, but my passion is donor development in all aspects. So working together to find those heroes either volunteer heroes, donor heroes, they're all donors, to make the mission happen and building a good team.
Well, that's incredible because not only are you able to work with the idea that you actually have your own, organization, but you're also able to get a peek into what's going on behind the scenes. And that takes us back into the topic that we wanted to consider in this video podcast regarding the state of COVID-19 and how that's affecting the budgets and the staff. A lot of staff is being let go because nonprofits don't have the funds and resources. And that's where you're a great asset to those who are listening, because you're providing key information for how we can, if you run a nonprofit, there is still a way to recruit the best talent at no direct cost. So how can we make this happen?
First, let's go back to what is a volunteer worth to an organization in today's world. And there's an independent sector that releases a value every single year. And the current value is $25 an hour. It's $25.43 an hour. But that is a huge value. If a volunteer is working 10 hours a week, even an hour a week, after 10 weeks, they've given you $250 of their time.
How do volunteers benefit a nonprofit organization?
Most volunteers are committed. Most volunteers will stay as long as the environment and the culture is welcoming to them. And they're a huge value. If you put that on paper, most volunteers are major donors. Most volunteers are going to work more than 10 hours. They're going to work 20, 30, 40, 60, 100 hours a year. And we need to, as a culture and as a nonprofit organization, make sure that our staff and our board, who are volunteers, and our leadership have an understanding that volunteers are not there to serve them. They are there to serve the mission. It can be very disheartening to volunteers if they get caught up in the day-to-day and are not constantly assured, reinforced on a regular basis, given responsibility.
Then, how does a nonprofit retain high-quality volunteers?
If your volunteer is worth $25 an hour or more, that culture, if you're going to recruit and keep high-value volunteers, then we need to address the culture at our organization on a regular basis. And volunteers, actually staff as well, most staff at nonprofit organizations do not make what they could make in a profit organization. They are talented human beings who have chosen to work for, because of the mission. They're more passionate about the mission than they are about the money. So if you can build a culture that is valuing people and valuing your team, your volunteers are going to fit right in. Your staff is going to feel better. They're going to treat your volunteers better. It's just going to be very important. So if you, first of all, address your culture before you even start recruiting volunteers. If your culture is not open to volunteers, change your culture. Volunteers can do so much more than filing, data entry, the typical answering the phone. Volunteers can lead an event. Volunteers can raise funds. They can be development associates. They can manage your computer, manage your website. They can manage your IT. There's so many different things that volunteers are willing to do on a volunteer basis, on a part-time basis, that we don't think of immediately because we think they're too important. They're, big deal. We have to pay a staff to do that.
How has this worked for you in the past?
In the past, I've worked with volunteers who are amazing graphic designers and could earn thousands and thousands of dollars for the pieces that they produced for organizations I've worked with. But they were passionate about the mission, so they volunteered their time. I've had award-winning journalists, retired award-winning journalists, travel journalists and war journalists write articles and put for the blog and for emails and for print material. And that person alone, if you count the dollar amounts brought in by the graphic designer and the writer that was an award-winning journalist, it's just amazing what they can do for you if you give them the freedom and you give them the power to do the job.
What kind of a work culture should there be at the nonprofit organization?
The culture needs to be such that you value your staff first. You value your volunteers as staff. That means you're going to respect their time. You're going to have clear job descriptions. You're going to articulate expectations very clearly and ask questions. You're going to give them the freedom if they're having a bad week to take time off. You're going to, and this is everybody, volunteers and staff. You're going to, if you see somebody's just really not having a great day, you're going to either alleviate the load, have a conversation with them, what can I do to help? If it's just they need a time off because they've been working too much, let them have time off that day, go home with pay or without if they're volunteers, whatever. Take them for coffee, buy them a donut, I don't know. But each person individually, so that as you're working with them, you need to know what floats their boat, what makes them tick. And that's really the bottom line about creating a culture that values people, is you have to sacrifice the task, lose that type A, we've got to get everything done, and get to know who's on your team, including the volunteers.
Is volunteering something that only young people can do?
One of the arguments you might get in today's world. Oh, well, a lot of the volunteers just aren't technologically savvy. It's really not true anymore. My mother uses a computer and an iPad and apps and Zoom, and she's 80. So it's just not true. You just have to keep looking for the right people. Make that part of your job requirement.
COVID-19 has resulted in a loss of staff because the funding is no longer as available because of, it's to hire more staff or to keep staff. So your suggestion for this is that there can always be a group of people that can help with a nonprofit if you tap into volunteers.
Absolutely.
So that's
yes.
So tap into volunteers would be, but with that also comes the responsibility of cultivating the relationship with your volunteer staff and realizing that it's not just them there to serve you. They're actually donors giving their time, and the skill set that is brought to that organization can be worth thousands of dollars. So your number one thing is remember that volunteers can bring the best talent, right? Number two,
they absolutely can.
And number two, realize that that the staff has to be cultivated. It's not just about putting them in to kind of just do these little
survive amongst these people that don't want you there. Yeah.
To do little jobs that anyone can do. So if you're a director or someone who's running an organization, you're basically, it's almost like when somebody says, I want to volunteer, you're also doing it's a situational interview. What is it that you can bring? It's not just having a warm body saying, oh yeah, I'm here to help. It's a very equipped director or someone who's really serious about what they're doing is looking at the person and saying, how is this person really going to fit with what the needs are? And am I willing to invest time with that person? Right?
Right. It's basically hiring somebody in a time when the funds just won't allow it. Now, you have to be careful. There are employment laws and all kinds of cool things that we need to have balance with. But when you have somebody a retired graphic designer or any of those skill sets, and they don't really want to work, they just want to volunteer. They don't want to get paid for their work. Let's put it that way. There's also internships.
Mhm.
You have up and coming college kids who need to get experience in the field that they're choosing to work. They can't do it without finding volunteer positions in today's world, a lot of it. The internships for many of the corporations have ceased because of COVID. Hospitals for sure, and airlines. Those internships just aren't there anymore.
Okay.
So there's lots of people that have incredible value that could serve at least in the interim, and then maybe you can hire them later when your budget does increase, or they'll lead to a permanent position at your organization at some point.
So on your end, would you rather say that nonprofits should not give up? There's still hope for this, even though there's a lot of stuff that's not in the place it was a year ago. Is there still hope? Can they still believe and dream that their mission and vision
Absolutely.
can continue?
It has to. The nonprofit world is how people get help. We want to lean on the government. We want to say that the government has never been successful at helping people. They've been successful at giving charity. But the nonprofit world is how most of your hospitals began, the best hospitals in the world. The nonprofit organizations are how people are truly, truly climbing out of poverty. Faith-based organizations give more money than anybody else to causes that are important to all of us. The environment will not be changed by the government. I think the laws will help, all of those different things, but it's going to take people. It's going to take individuals passionate about a cause working together. That's really the only way things have changed before and things have happened before. During the Great Depression, people took neighbors in their homes. It wasn't the government that saved the day. It wasn't, it was just good-hearted people working together to find solutions for all the problems that they faced at that time. Now, we're not anywhere near that, right? But we are, for some people, it is pretty bad. For some people, some organizations in the nonprofit world are doing great. They're food banks, they're helping the homeless, those kinds of things are really doing pretty well. International organizations or ministries are struggling big time. So,
is it possible still to recruit the best talent for your nonprofit and no direct costs?
Yes, absolutely. I think that, zero direct costs, no. You've got to minister to your volunteers.
I worked with an organization that helped me with that. I was in the middle of a project and my computer crashed, and I was like, I didn't know what to do. And I was able to get a brand new computer, but they also got the opportunity to keep me on board for another year. And I was able to do 4 big projects with them, it was a win-win, because like you mentioned before, the value of the projects were probably in the thousands, so it saved them a lot of money.
Yeah. At least I'm close. I think the projects, because I'm familiar with it, was probably close to 10,000. Yeah. And the computer cost them maybe 1,500. So
that's a big win-win. Yeah. So
I think that's one of the culture shifts that has to change in nonprofit world is think creatively.
Yes.
You don't have money for staff. Maybe you had to let some of your staff off, either furloughed or laid off. Mm-hmm. Spend $2,000 to keep a really good volunteer to help you stay afloat for the next 10 months.
From my experience, I volunteer with a lot of nonprofits in regards to supporting them with graphic design. My biggest reward is when I'm validated. If I'm validated, respected, and heard, I'm there. I mean, I'll stick around. I will. it's not even about whether I'm getting something directly back in that's
Right.
tangible. It's whether I'm seen as a person. And I will go further than what's expected if I can hear that coming from the other side.
If we don't treat our volunteers like you said and validate them and treat them where they have a voice in the team,
Mhm.
then they're not going to stay. I mean, these people are professionals. You have talents and skills, degrees, and you know, um, look. When we're in the nonprofit realm, we need to look at those people and say, what can we learn from them to do a better job for this mission? Because the mission is the goal.
So would you say that's your takeaway point?
The mission is the goal.
Mhm.
Yes. If
So
if we could get outside of ourselves and not think about our achievements or getting credit or and start giving the credit away to the volunteers. The volunteers are the heart and the heroes with the donors. The donors and the volunteers make the mission happen. We are conduits to direct that money, direct that time so that it does do better for the mission.
And then adding on that, it does answer the question that even in the midst of very dire times, there is still a way to find the best talent for a nonprofit if you're willing to invest in the right people with the right attitude and the right approach.
Be so clear about what you're looking for. Those people exist. And in today's world, it's going to be virtual most of the time. So think creatively. What can you take off your desk? That's how I usually start. What is it I'm doing that I don't have to do, that takes away from my ability to speak to donors or write grants or any of those things, even writing grants? There are people who are just starting out in the grant career who want to build their resume, basically. So they'll volunteer to write grants for you.
Wow.
There are classes in all over the country at universities teaching grant writing where you can partner with them. You become a mentor to these grant teams or to these grant writers. And yes, it takes a little bit of your time and you are investing, but it's certainly, as much as we always say, oh, I would just be faster if I do it myself. No, it won't, because the next time they're going to do better. And the next time they're going to do even better. And then you're not even involved anymore. So just invest in other people. It'll all come back to you.
Well, Daphne, you have shared with us some amazing information, and this is coming from someone who's not just talking from knowledge that you've read. It's actually work in the trenches, and you still are there.
It has worked. Yeah.
So we appreciate that you were able to make time to share that information with us. However, I was wondering if you could give us some information in regards to how we can contact you if someone is interested in learning more about global nonprofit help. They could just, get in touch with you that way.
Absolutely. We are a consulting team, and the email address, the best one to reach, is info@globalnonprofithelp.com. You can go to our website at globalnonprofithelp.com and kind of bounce around and look at what we have to offer. We do an email occasionally, mostly articles, and we have a podcast called For Humanity. Find that on Buzzsprout currently. We hope to expand soon to iTunes and the other platforms, but we've just launched that. So,
well, thank you so much for joining in today. And for those who are listening, tune in again to Activation Talks. We hope that all who have been watching and listening have been both encouraged and empowered. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and join us for Activation Talks again soon.